Hey everyone, it's Shikari Dill, and as you can see, we're going to do another prestige run, and I'm going to try to get another build going. As you can see, this is going to be a longer format video, so if you like this sort of content, you like what I'm doing, then go ahead and hit that like and sub button. I would really appreciate that. I want to go for a melee hunter build. Now, some cool enchants that we can use for that. Two ideas in mind. We can go Deadly Bite with Mongoose Bite and counterattack applying a bleed would be interesting and making our Raptor Strike deal 15% more damage. Or we could go with Demolisher with the focus being on the Mongoose Bite effect. Basically, our Mongoose Bite will be a guaranteed critical strike and deal 50% damage. So for a melee hunter build, I'm going to go with a two-handed melee weapon, and I'm going to make agility as my main stat, as Mongoose Bite typically, I think, does scale off of agility, and so does Raptor Strike. I also want to try to look for a wing clip as I'm leveling, because there's some good synergy there, some good enchants. And we want to look for counterattack, because our talents can kind of do some cool stuff with counterattack. Also, I'm going to be putting timestamps in the description and the comments below, so feel free to skip ahead. If you don't like this extra gameplay stuff, you can just skip to the parts where I discuss how the build works and kind of how I set it up. So I believe you can go a two-handed agility-based build and still have weapon or Mortal Strike be very useful. So I'm going to go ahead and take Mortal Strike and replace Flame Tongue weapon. And I'm going to go ahead and take Wind Fury weapon. And I'm going to replace this with Arcane Barrage, which I did for my Arcane build last video. It's really tough deciding between Wind Fury weapon and Rock Biter, but ultimately I ended up going with Wind Fury because I want to talent into it, and I just think it's burstier. And I want to go for the big burst on this melee hunter build. If you want more consistent damage, then you'll definitely want to go Rock Biter, and you don't need to invest as many resources into it as well. Alright, so we're going to continue rolling for our spells here. We want charge, and there's the charge. Okay, so that's going to be pretty good for us. We'll want to take all the melee abilities that Survival Hunter gives, so I think Raptor Strike will be pretty solid here. Probably going to take a life tap. I mean, it's the safe bet, and I don't think I'll run into mana issues on this build, since, you know, the melee hunter abilities don't cost much mana, but you know, just in case, I'm going to go ahead and grab Life Tap. I have also a golden skill card for Cleave. I'm going to go ahead and take Cleave, and I'm going to replace Felt Armor. And that'll be our starting setup for now. Alrighty, so now that I've got all of my level 1 spells, I'm going to just go ahead and start leveling to 15, get a Aura group together, and then get that Prestige going. So yeah, I'll see you guys when I hit level 60, and we'll try to get this melee hunter build going. I'm very excited to try to get this build going. I haven't done a melee build in a while. I've been doing a lot of caster builds, so this should be a lot of fun. Alright, we're back, and as you can see, I took a little bit of a break, and we're going to unpack some spells here. And so really, we're going to be hoping and looking for something like Wing Clip might be pretty good. Alrighty, so I'm going to start off here with 36 Hands of Fate, which is not bad. It's a pretty decent amount. We can get more if we really need some more spells that I'm looking for, but this should be good for what we're doing now. Actually, before we do that, we gotta actually just unpack the skills I got naturally from leveling, so let's go ahead and take a look at that. I'm gonna go ahead and take Sprint. I think having a movement speed buff is always very solid in a melee build, so go ahead and take Sprint. Oh my gosh, it gave us Blade Flurry alongside Wind Fury weapon. That is rough. That is rough. I mean, Blade Flurry is really good. Even for a two-handed build, that's rough. But I can't pass up our Wind Fury weapon. It's just a little bit too important, I feel like, for this build. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that. Alright, so this is a really good pull. Either Intimidating Shout or Shadow Step. These are both pretty decent. We're going to just take Mobility. Mobility is king in PvP, so we're going to take Shadow Step. And that's going to be everything for all of our abilities that we grab naturally. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start unpacking our cards here, Hands of Fate, and let's just see what we get. This is really good for us. Explosive Trap is going to be a really strong AoE option for us. I think there's going to be some synergies with the melee hunter tree. So I think Explosive Trap here is a really good option for us. And yeah, we'll get rid of Blessing and Might for it, no big deal. Now deterrence is interesting. We might be able to get some talents in there. So we have a talent in there called Survivalist, which if we pop our deterrence, it'll give us a 30% movement speed buff. So if we need to get out of there, we need to pop deterrence and just run out of there. We don't have our sprint. That might be a pretty good option for us. So I think deterrence is really good because we might be able to hit it with several talents that will reduce its cooldown as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab that. Alright, so after looking at talents for a little bit, to be honest, I can't really see any reason why we would take Feign Death as our epic spell slot. I guess in Feign Death you could just like Feign Death at cast time and you could interrupt the spell for someone in PvP. PvE, you could drop aggro. It's okay, it's just not exactly what I'm looking for here. I'm looking for a melee, or I'm looking for a kick, an interrupt basically. So we got an interesting spell. We got Frost Nova. That could be maybe potentially interesting for keeping enemies in place in melee range. I really do think that Frost Nova could be an interesting choice here. So let's go ahead. I'm actually going to go ahead and take that. There's a dumb bug in here. It's really annoying. Summon Water Elemental. I have Frost Nova, and now I get Summon Water Elemental. Where was this with my Frostbolt build? Seriously, this is just crazy. I don't need it. But dang it, I wanted it a while ago. This is just something else. I think Feint might be an interesting skill here. It's a 10-second cooldown. In PvP, it'll basically give us a free dodge in PvP. So if we see a Chaos Bolt coming our way, we just hit Feint and we'll dodge it. So I think Feint might be a pretty cool tool here. Alright, so that was my first round of cards. I'm pretty happy with this haul that we've got so far. I mean, really, I've got most of what I was looking for. Alrighty, so we've got 12 more cards here. 12 more packs of cards here. I think this should be good. I mean, I've basically gone a lot of what I was looking for, so at this point, it's basically just looking for stuff that might be really nice in addition. Now, Riposte is something I would never usually take, but we did get Feint, and there's a talent, or there's an enchant that makes it so when we use Feint, our Riposte becomes available to use, and it does a quite significant amount of damage. 150% weapon damage is nothing to scoff at. So I think in this rare instance, I'm gonna take Riposte, even though it is one talent point. But I think, seeing as we got 45 points after this, I think we should be okay on talents. So I'm going to go ahead and take it. Alright, so I just pulled Disarm, which is an interesting tool. Removing all weapons, shield, or other equipment carried for 7 seconds. I mean, that could be really cool. Again, I'm still looking for a kick, but I think since I don't want to spend too many more card packs on this, I think Disarm might be really strong. Really cool tool for PvP, so I think I'm going to go ahead and take it. Well, we'd have to replace Rend, Mongoose Bite, or Raptor Strike, and that's kind of an issue because I kind of want to keep Rend. I've got Overpower, and I kind of want to keep my options open for our build here. Sometimes it'd be like this. Sometimes it'd be like this. I mean, they're all common, so they wouldn't be hard to get, but I just don't want to deal with fishing for them, so I'm just going to go ahead and cancel it. So if you don't know what Demolishing Strike is, it's basically an enhanced version of Mortal Strike given to me by the Demolisher talent. And basically, my goal here is I'm going to stack up the Demolisher talent 10 times, and when we get the proc, we can use Mongoose Bite to deal 50% more damage and guaranteed to critically strike and not trigger its cooldown. I was experimenting with Repartee, and basically what this does is it allows our Feint to let us use Riposte. Usually Riposte only becomes available after parrying an opponent's attack, but with combining this with this enchant with Feint, allows us to use this instantly, which is kind of cool in PvP. It slows attack speed and stuff. Okay, so after kind of messing around with the Deadly Bite enchant, which I threw on a random piece of gear, and I threw it on, it actually does a lot of damage. So what's interesting about the Deadly Bite is it actually stacks up the Raptor Strike damage. So initially I thought it was the 15% damage, but no, that's not the case. If you get all 5 stacks on your Raptor, on your deadly bite on the target, your Raptor Strike is going to be hitting 75% harder. So that's actually really big. So, and so far the bleed damage that I've been complementing is I took all the bleed stuff like Deep Wounds, Improved Rend, and Trauma, Blood Frenzy. And so I'm actually really enjoying this bleed version of this melee hunter build. It kind of feels like a berserker, like a melee hunter berserker, kind of how I wish survival hunter was in retail WoW. So one thing that I want to point out about Demolishing Strike is you actually lose the ability to reduce the healing taken on the Mortal Strike that you usually get. That'll be one of the trade-offs with taking Demolishing Strike, is it does a lot more damage, it can be a lot burstier, and can empower some of our other stuff like Counterattack and Mongoose Bite, but you lose that reduced healing effectiveness. So after messing around with talents for both the Demolishing Strike and the Deadly Bite build, let me show you a little bit of the talents that I've done here. What I've done is I basically did Improved Rend, Impale, because our Impale is going to make our Mortal Strike hit really hard. And instead of doing the Repartee epic ability that allows us to get a free trigger of our Repost, I instead did just go all in on Overpower. You really can't go wrong with Overpower. It basically can't be dodged, blocked, whatever, and it's just really strong when you talent into it. So I took Improved Overpower, I put points into Taste for Blood, and then I went ahead and basically found a talent, or not found, but I saw the talent Juggernaut, and basically it allows our charge to get a 100% chance for our next Mortal Strike to apply Rend, which is really big and really bursty in PvP. You don't want to waste any global cooldowns. Just applying a Rend in PvP feels really bad. And then I put 1 point into Blood Frenzy just to get a 2% melee attack speed buff and 2% physical damage increase. Now, I also went ahead and kept 3 points into Deep Wounds, which is kind of debatable. I'm still trying to figure out whether I want to keep Deep Wounds, but as it stands, we have 35% critical strike, which means we are critting a lot. So I am seeing a little bit of effectiveness from Deep Wounds, but I'm still on the fence about it. Talents like Elemental Weapons for Wind Fury, and then I went ahead and took Flurry, which will increase our melee attack speed every time we crit, which is basically all the times. And then I went ahead and took Savage Strikes, increased the critical strike chance of our counterattack, Mongoose Bite, Raptor Strike, and Wing Clip. Raptor Strike hits really hard with the Deadly Bite build. I mean, like I showed earlier, that stacks up to like 75% damage. If you just keep hitting those Raptor Strikes, it's massive damage. Survivalist I took because I took deterrence, and I really actually enjoy having the movement speed when I pop deterrence. It's really funny. You can just pop deterrence and just boom, you're out of there. And then I took Exposed Weakness, which I think is really powerful. As you can tell, it says increases your attack power by a $% So I'm not exactly sure how much that's supposed to be, but all I know is it's a lot. Whenever this thing triggers, I'm getting a lot of extra attack power, and it's really nice. And then I took Killer Instinct. Now, Killer Instinct is really cool because basically this is what allows us to use our counterattack ability, which is usually only available when we parry an opponent, but, you know, we're not a tank or anything. So basically, Killer Instinct will allow us to use Mongoose Bite directly into a counterattack for free. The Repost is a really cool idea, but I think it's not really worth using and going with the Feint Repost activation. And I think it's just way better to use Overpower in almost every instance. That being said, I took an epic enchant called Insatiable, which makes it so your Taste for Blood effect now increases the damage of your Overpower, stacking up to 3 times, so 60%. And when you use Overpower, it can trigger it, crit, it does crazy damage, so I took that. I'm still using In for the Kill, because I really like being able to just refresh Rend with my Mortal Strikes. And for my third, you can use Counterpoise, but I also, for your third epic enchant, you can also use for like AoE situations. You can use like Blades of Blood if you want to apply Rend to everything after using Whirlwind, after using Charge, which is kind of cool. And so really it comes down to how you want to play this build, because Demolisher is going to be a little bit burstier because, I mean, your Mortal Strike is just going to be hitting hard. But the downside is if you do this in PvP, then you're going to have to talent into Furious Attacks, which will reduce the effectiveness of heals, and I think that's just mandatory in PvP. Deadly Bite is not as bursty, but that damage ramps up really fast. It is very consistent, it ramps up fast, and your Raptor Strikes, once you get to 5 stacks on your target, are going to be hitting very hard. So after messing around with both Deadly Bite and Demolisher, I wanted to break down the pros and cons of trying to set up an agility based melee build. Some of the pros are, it has great single target burst damage. Taking Wind Fury weapon was perfect for this build. Whenever I got the Wind Fury attack with Demolishing Strike, it did some pretty insane burst, and it was a lot of fun. It had strong consistent single target damage. There are a variety of enchant options that could synergize with this build. And lastly, it was pretty easy to set up. The abilities you need for this build to get running aren't too hard to get. The biggest drawback for this build I found was the AoE damage can be pretty lacking, and you're going to have to mess around and theorycraft a bit to try to find the right AoE rotation that works for you. I never did end up getting anything like Blade Flurry or Sweeping Strikes, and instead having to just use Cleave and Whirlwind for AoE damage, which just isn't that great by itself. This build can be pretty squishy, especially for a melee. This is because you're going to want to build this like a hunter with agility mail gear. So you're really going to be missing out on a decent amount of armor that you would be getting if you built this like a warrior with plate gear. Both Deadly Bite and Demolisher were incredibly fun legendary Aries to build around. I had a great time dishing out some massive burst damage, especially with my Wind Fury weapon effect. Though I do think Demolisher might have the slight advantage in PvP. Because that Demolishing Strike version of Mortal Strike is just insanely powerful in PvP. And I feel like Deadly Bite has some ramp up time that you need to get going in PvP, and usually having that burst damage right out the gate is better. However, in PvE, both of them are perfectly viable options. But it's for this reason that I would give the Demolisher build a solid 4 out of 5 marks of Ascension, and Deadly Bite a 3.5 out of 5 marks of Ascension. Am I wrong? Am I right? Let me know what you think of these legendary enchants in the comments down below. And as always, thanks so much for watching this video. I would really appreciate it if you hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoyed my content, and I will see you all in the next video.